I'm Pastor Coley Batavia, and welcome back to our Avent series, Being Fulfilled Among Us. Today is day 23, and we're starting our scripture reading in verse 72. This is part 2 of Zechariah's prophecy. God has shown the mercy promised to our ancestors and remembered the holy covenant, the solemn pledge made to our ancestor Abraham. God has granted that we would be rescued from the power of our enemies, so that we could serve without fear in holiness and righteousness in God's eyes for as long as we live. We celebrate communion at our church twice a month, and when we do, there's special words or liturgy that we say, and we change the words so it's not exactly the same every time. But in general, it's meant to remind us of what we're doing and why it's important and why we're doing it. There's a particular phrase that's often in this communion liturgy that says that God is faithful even when we are faithless. This calls to mind stories of our ancestors in faith who were not perfect. They did not unfailingly listen to God and do everything God said, but they were human. They made mistakes. They didn't listen sometimes too. We see this in the stories of Abraham and Sarah, even Moses. Jacob is probably my favorite example of it, but another good example are Jesus' disciples. They are with Jesus all the time. They're following him around, listening to everything he says and witnessing the miracles that happen. And yet, time and time again, they just don't get it. Their doubts and insecurities creep in, and their faith fails them, and over again, they mess up. And yet Jesus not only keeps them around, but Jesus trusts them to carry on his ministry after he's gone. These are the kinds of stories that I think of when I hear this phrase, that God is faithful even when we are faithless. And these are the kinds of stories that Zechariah 2 is drawing on today for the words of his prophecy that remind us about God has promised mercy to our ancestors and remembered the holy covenant, the pledge and promises that were given to our ancestors. God is faithful even when we are faithless. Thanks for tuning in today. Tomorrow is the third and final part of Zechariah's prophecy. We'll see you then.